What is up, guys? Today we're going to be checking out some of my favorite smartphones around the $250 to $300 price point. None of these should go over $300. So the first one on the list is the LG V40. You can pick this up for around $230 right now. Links will be down below, and I absolutely love this phone. So you have a premium design. It's a glass back and metal phone, and it just feels super solid in the hand. It is IP68 dust and water resistant, which is always nice. The great thing about this phone is you have a OLED display. It's a 6.4-inch display, so a pretty big display with a crazy 1440p resolution with 537 for the PPI. So just a beautiful display. Gets pretty bright outdoors as well. Just really nice, very sharp. Always love a 1440p display. Now the great thing about this phone is that it's got Android 10, so I'm still waiting for the update on mine, but it is rolling out on the V40. So you have the Snapdragon 845 and the Adreno 630. So with Android 10, this phone is going to be blazing fast, and gaming performance on here is excellent as well. It's just a beast. You can max out most games with that chip. You also have micro SD card support along with 64 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. Now, of course, this phone has the headphone jack, the NFC, as well as the fingerprint scanner on the back, which is very fast. And you also have some pretty respectable cameras on here as well. You have a triple camera setup on the back, a 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K video, 30 or 60 FPS, and you also have a dual camera on the front, an 8 megapixel and a 5 megapixel wide for those group selfies. So as you can see, the photos on here are excellent. Pretty good color accuracy, great dynamic range, great details of photos. Overall, just a pretty great camera. So you do have a kind of a small battery for the size of this phone, a 3300 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging with 10 watt wireless charging, and the battery life on here, you're looking at around 7 hours of screen on time. If you're a hardcore user, if you're a light user, you can easily squeeze 8 hours of battery life, which is actually pretty great. So very good for this phone. Next is the Xiaomi Note 8 Pro. So this is one of my favorite phones from last year, and it's at around $230 again, sometimes $250. The price kind of fluctuates, but a very nice phone for the price. So you have one of my favorite designs, very beautiful design. It's a glass back with a plastic frame, and it's a very heavy kind of premium feeling phone. So I just really love the design, especially on the color that I have. Just really nice looking. So you have a 6.5-inch IPS display, so a very big display. It's a 1080p panel with 395 for the PPI. It does get pretty bright outdoors, and it has good color, good viewing angle, so no issues with the display. You do have Android 10 with MIUI 11 on here, and the Helio G90T processor is actually a really good processor. It's very fast with the Mali G76 GPU. Now you can play most games on high, like Fortnite, PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, so this is a great gaming phone as well. You do have micro SD card support to expand the 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. So overall, this is a fast phone, very smooth. Multitasking is really great. Have your headphone jack still on here along with NFC, and you have a infrared port, so if you want to use this as a remote controller, you can do that as well. The fingerprint scanner on the back is very fast as well, so no issues with that. So the camera setup, you have a quad camera. It's a 64 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 2 megapixel macro camera for very close-up shots, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. On the front, you have a 20 megapixel wide that shoots in 1080p, 30 FPS, and as you can see, the cameras on here are very nice. You get some really sharp detail with these photos, which is something that I really like. Dynamic range is great, depth of field is great, color accuracy is pretty good most of the time. So overall, just a super solid camera for a phone at this price point. So you have a massive 4500 milliamp battery on this phone with 18 watt fast charging, no wireless charging though, but you're looking at around 8 to 9 hours of screen on time depending on how you use it, which I think is perfectly fine. So you can definitely get through a day and a half with this phone very easy. Alright, next is the Galaxy A51 for around $270, and this phone does not have a super premium design. It's a basically a plastic phone, but the design on here, like the sort of psychedelic color shifting. It's just very cool. So I like the design itself. It just doesn't feel like a super premium phone. It is very thin though, which I think a lot of people might like. But you do have the Super AMOLED display on here. It's a 6.5-inch display, so pretty big display. And I love that this has the punch hole. It's the next best thing to the pop-up camera with the full screen display. This is the next best thing. It's a Super AMOLED. It's a beautiful display. Very color accurate, deep dark blacks, and pretty sharp at 405 for the PPI. So a very nice display. And like I said, that punch hole is just very small, and it just gives you an immersive experience. So if you're a Samsung fan, you're gonna love Android 10 with One UI 2.1. It has all the latest features of the One UI that you would like, so that is very great. The Exynos 9611 processor is fine with the Mali G72 GPU. Gaming and stuff like that is perfectly fine. Navigating through the OS is fine, so not a whole bunch of lag and stuff like that. Overall, pretty speedy phone. So you do have micro SD card support with 64 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here. Now you have a quad camera setup on here, and this is one of my favorite looking camera modules. I usually don't like the way that they're doing the camera modules now, but I actually really like how it came out on this one. So you have a 48 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor, 4K video, 32 megapixel selfie camera with 1080p video. So the cameras on here are pretty good, not bad by any means. You get very color accurate photos. Like I said, you have all those cameras to take advantage of. The macro camera is very fun to play with. Detail is there, color accuracy is there. So overall, a decent camera. It's nothing like super crazy, but overall I found photos to be perfectly acceptable. So you do have a 3.5mm jack, of course, with NFC. You also have the fingerprint scanner under the display, which is something that I really like just because it's cool. I think it's cooler than the physical fingerprint scanner, and it just looks more up to date. So you do have a 4000 milliamp battery with 15-watt fast charging, and this phone is very hard to kill within a day. You're looking at like 8 to 9 hours of screen on time. Just very impressive screen on time and standby time. So a very good battery performer on here. Even with the 4000 milliamp battery, it just lasts so long thanks to Samsung's optimization, I'm assuming here. So overall, just a beast of a phone. Next is the Mi 9T, again for around $260-270. You can pick this phone up. If I was going to pick a phone on this list, I would be really considering this one because it has the full screen display, which is something that I absolutely love. But let's go ahead and talk about the hardware. So it is a glass back and aluminum frame, so just a very nice and beautiful feeling phone in the hand. So really love the design on here. It's an AMOLED display, full screen, no notch. You have the little pop-up selfie camera, 6.39 inches. You also have a 1080p resolution with 403 for the PPI. Just a beautiful display, very color accurate, very bright. Just an awesome display. I really love full screen displays. It just makes everything more immersive. So this is upgradable to Android 10 with MIUI 11. You have the Snapdragon 730 and Adreno 618. So this is overall a very good gaming phone as well if you want to do that. The only thing with this phone is that it does not have expandable storage. So if you wanted to go crazy with this phone and put a bunch of stuff on it, you can't really unless you buy the 128 gig model. The standard is 64 gigs with 6 gigs of RAM, so kind of sucks, but not a huge bummer. You do have a pretty good camera setup as well, 48 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. Shoots in 4K. You do have the pop-up camera. It's a 20 megapixel for the selfie and a 1080p for video. Cameras on here are pretty good. Overall, you're getting great detail with shots. Color accuracy is fine. So for this price point, I didn't really have an issue with the cameras on here. So this phone also has NFC for mobile payments. The fingerprint scanner under the display is actually very fast, so that's something that I really like. And you have a 4000 milliamp battery, no wireless charging, but you do have 18-watt fast charging. And this is another phone that the battery life lasts for a really long time. We're looking at around 8 to 9 hours of screen on time, so definitely a battery beast. Last on the list is the LG G8. So if you get the renewed version, which I have, which looks beautiful, works great, you're looking at around 250 for the price. Just excellent smartphone, one of the best on this list, and you'll see why once I go over these specs. So you have a premium build quality. It's a glass and aluminum frame, IP68 dust and water resistant, of course. You have a beautiful POLED display. It's a 6.1 inch, so for a lot of people it's not too big, not too small. You also have 1440p resolution, just crazy resolution, 564 for the PPI. So this is a very sharp and it's beautiful display. It gets pretty bright as well. You do have Android 10 out of the box, but this is the best part about this phone. It's the only phone on the list with the Snapdragon 855 processor. So it's a true flagship processor, one of the later processors, Adreno 640. So this thing kills anything when it comes to gaming and stuff like that. You'll be able to max most games out: Fortnite, PUBG, Call of Duty, whatever. This is a gaming beast. So you have the micro SD support with 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM, which is awesome to get that on such a cheap phone. So multitasking, navigating through Android 10, a beast on the G8. You have a very good cameras on here, 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. Never had an issue getting a good shot out of the G8. So you have 4K video as well. So as you can see, cameras on here are more than acceptable here. You also have an 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p. You have the headphone jack with the quad DAC. So for my people who love music listening and stuff like that on your device, then the V40 on the list and this phone have excellent quad DACs and equalization settings. So you have NFC for mobile payments, as well as some really good Face ID technology. It's not the crappy standard Android. It's actually real Face ID. You have the hand ID, which is a little gimmicky. I never really liked it that much, but you do have that on here. So you have the fingerprint scanner if you don't prefer that and you want to use the physical one. So that is very fast, as well as very good battery life. So we're again looking at 8 to 9 hours of screen on time with the 3500 milliamp battery. Very fast charging with 21 watts and wireless charging as well. So overall, one of my favorite phones. If you're gonna ask me, I probably will be looking at the G8 or the Mi 9T, because I just really love the full screen display, but you also just have a beast of specs on the G8, and then you have niche stuff like the V50 or the A51 for Samsung fans and stuff like that. So be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.